So that was an interesting way, some topics to get started this morning. My name is Daniel Young. I'm the director of BoldWorks. And it is, my agency is a consulting agency focused on digital health and remote patient care. So the work that I have been doing over the past years has been focused around developing new digital products, both IoT, AI, machine learning-based products around delivering care to patients at home. So we've been working on various components of anywhere from hardware systems that are monitoring coughing to back-end systems that are moving data from the patient to electronic medical record system, and touching on a variety of different topics when it comes from a regulatory perspective. And that's where I'm going with today's topic. The conversations around AI and ML can be sometimes often filled with a lot of hype, that there's a lot of promise about the future, there's a lot of things that people say that AI and machine learning can do, but what we really don't know, or what's often not talked about, is what's going on behind the scenes, especially from a regulatory perspective. You know, the FDA has published some opinions about AI, stating about how promising it can be in the future and how much it can tie together, you know, vast sets of data having to do with patient medical records, biomarkers, telemetry coming from a patient, whatnot. But what they struggle to find is a good regulatory construct for it and a good framework, because one of the challenges that people fail to realize is that machine learning is dependent upon data sets, and it continues to improve itself. It's a dynamic process. It's a dynamic technology. And so over time, it gets better and better with the more data and the more it learns. The problem is that the paradigm of the regulatory frameworks in both the EU and within the United States is built on a traditional model where you have to develop the product, you have to test it, and when you go for certification, you lock it down. It's no longer dynamic. So it's directly opposed with the way ML works. So today's conversation, and I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves here in a second, is really about how do we deal with this? How do we develop a framework? What kind of framework? What are the questions we should be asking around the regulatory environments and artificial intelligence? And with that, I would like to ask my panel to please go ahead and start introducing themselves.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here. Great panel. Great to be among you all as well. So to introduce myself, my name is Vipul Shrivastava. I'm working as a project manager, digital health at Center for Cellular and Molecular Platforms. It's a Government of India initiated and supported institute. I have come all the way from India. With background, I am an electrical engineer. I graduated from IIT Kharagpur with specialization in electrical engineering. Then I worked in Philips Healthcare, where I was instrumental in designing the healthcare products, R&D, interventional X-ray products. Then I tried my own initiative in the area of remote healthcare, where I tried to focus on affordability and accessibility, the two of the main issues that the Indian healthcare system faces presently. I also worked in a policy advisory role to one of these states in India in the healthcare domain. And currently, when I'm working as a project manager in digital health, I'm working with the startups, trying to focus on the technology assessment of the deep tech, something like AI in healthcare. When I say deep tech, I mean to say surgical navigation, those kind of products, handheld devices of cancer imaging, and various other sorts of domains within the AI. So we work with the startups to try and see whether they are technically feasible, whether they are business-wise feasible to go ahead with, what are the regulatory landscapes for them, whether they are fit enough to enter into a particular market or not. If yes, how should they proceed? Also the investor connect. We have the partnerships with international as well as local national partnerships as well. We have the partnerships with UK government, Switzerland, and various other sort of private players are also involved in these partnerships through which we try and support these startups. To sum up, this has been an AI-driven journey so far. Presently, I'm also pursuing a PhD in smart healthcare, where I'm focusing on ophthalmology images on the screening of AR-MD, which is age-related macular degeneration, macula being a central part of the eye. So we're trying to do some research and get some products out of it. So that's it about myself. I'll ask other panelists to introduce themselves as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here and to share this panel. My name is Daniel Torres Gonçalves. I'm a health lawyer. I work with these matters for more than 15 years. The first time I heard about AI and the law was with Professor �၀𝐻𝐿 in Edinburgh 15 years ago. I heard him talking about AI, and I thought, okay, this is a long shot. This is really funny to discuss, but I don't see this coming to real life. And time came to give reason to Professor �၀𝐻𝐿, and I am glad to be working on this topic for so long. So right now I work with the health, the pharmaceutical, and the IT sectors, mainly concerning medical devices, and we work with startups, with big companies on the pharma and the health services, and so it's a pleasure to be here, and I hope to have a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hello everyone, I'm Nidhi Gani, and I'm currently a principal regulatory engineer. That title is wrong. I changed my jobs after that. So I'm a principal regulatory engineer at 𝐿𝐵𝐶𝐻, and my sole role is to make sure that we commercialize software products to the market, and I work currently on continuous glucose monitoring for insulin pumps. And apart from that, I'm also an advisor for 𝐻𝐸𝐻, where we build regulatory compliance products. And I'm a professor at Northeastern University, Boston. I teach regulatory product development strategy with a focus on cybersecurity and digital health. And I got interested in AI from like a couple of years ago when I was working at Harvard Innovations Lab, when we were trying to make hearables to detect your heart rate and respiration rate. And ever since, I've loved technology, AI, although I'm a biotechnology engineer by background, and I'm very excited about the panel. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Hugh Harvey, a consultant radiologist by background with a postdoctoral research degree in machine learning as applied to medical imaging. And I have worked at 2 UK-based AI startups and have worked on the regulatory side, getting some of the first CE mark approvals for AI or deep learning-driven software as a medical device. And I now run a consultancy in the UK which serves global startups trying to get CE marking, FDA clearances, and now the new UK CA mark. I think I've helped over about 32 companies now successfully get these clearances. And I also advise the UK government, or the government body, the MHRA, on the new paradigm of AI as a medical device. So excited to be on this regulatory panel. And I'd just like to say you are all in the best room, because without getting the regulations right, none of the other AI stuff you'll hear about will happen.
Yeah, very, very true. I think one of the most, whenever we're developing or researching technologies, it's very important to keep the regulatory aspects in mind, because they have a material impact on almost every aspect of how medical technology is developed and engineered. And that's been a very important consideration, not just for the projects I've worked on, but for my clients and whatnot. So let's switch from me talking to the panelists. One of the most important things that I would like you guys to start sharing some information about is like, what are the current challenges with trying to get a CE mark on an AI product? What is the process look like? And Hugh, I'm going to go back to you, since you've done this for more than a few companies. Just kind of get it started, and then I would like to hear everybody else's considerations on this.
Sure. So the regulations are a very logical set of standards that have grown over time, borrowing lessons learned from physical medical devices and pharmaceutical medicines. So the basic premise is that before you can put something on market that is going to change a care pathway or affect a patient in a certain way, you have to do certain things, such as write down what your thing does. It sounds really obvious, but some people get this wrong at the very start. Once you know what it does, you then have to think, well, how do I prove that it does that? And you have to prove it in 3 ways. You have to prove that there's a valid clinical association between what your device does and the outcome you want to claim. You have to show that it's technically capable to do what it does. And then you have to show in a clinical study that the clinical evidence for the outcomes are actually achievable. And the regulations are written into EU law. We have UK law now, and it's also federal law in America. So you have to provide a whole pile of technical documentation. It can be up to thousands of pages of documentation to show how you've designed your software based on the requirements that you've decided that your device needs, and done it in conformance with a logical, scientific, and technical development process. That's it in a nutshell. When it comes to the AI devices, there's extra complications which we can talk about. But one of them is, how do you monitor that once it's on market? And this is where the regulations currently are lacking.
So Daniel, to put you on the spot, since you're the lawyer in the room, so to speak, what do you think are some of the shortcomings within, generalized between the EU and in Europe as well as the US? But what is holding back? What kind of framework do we need to put in place to be able to start to embrace more of the machine learning and the dynamic learning?
Yeah, the challenges are great, and they will take some time, but things are moving. So I believe the first step is taken, is that the EU is aware that there is a path to go, and some steps have been made in the last days, I would say, even days. Okay, because the first time we heard about e-health on written in law is more than 10 years ago, in 2011. So there was a directive in which we said that member states have to make the data shareable, but nothing else was seen since then, almost. Because with AI, going a little back, you said that the AI starts from the data sets. So we have to have data available, accurate, the more complete possible, and that's one of the challenge that we have in Europe, is to have a pool of data that is available, that is reliable, and that is called the European personal data space. This year there is a proposal concerning this, bringing this to life, that will make the secondary use of data, that includes research, much more useful. So the aim is to have health data from European citizens secure and shareable, and able to be operated by different systems. So interoperability is one of the issues that this proposal is setting. And so I would say that the first challenge, so the starting point, is to have something to feed the AI systems, so they get better, and that is one of the paths that you are running, but you still have a long way to go. The other one is the AI itself. So once you feed the machine, how do you control it? So the first part is the data, and we have the European health data space to that, and then on the other hand, how do you control that? Then you have a proposal from last year concerning artificial intelligence. So you have to assess it, you have to make it human-centered, you have to make it accountable, and so that's the starting point. But then on the AI regulation side, you have other stuff, namely the liability of using AI. And so, on this topic, the news have some days, because on 28th September, so more than a month ago only, there was a proposal concerning liability of AI. So this is a hot topic right now, and replying, so we have to feed the machine, and so we have the data space for that, and then we have to regulate the machine. So the AI, generally speaking, and the liability, and then I can speak more specifically about that.
Good. Yes, obviously this is going to be an area that's going to change a lot, but it all starts with the data and where we get the data. But there's also, a very important topic that this data that we're talking about, we treat it generically, but it's very personal. It's related to, individuals, people, patients. And so there's a human side on it, and that data needs to be protected. So I want to broach the topic of cybersecurity here, because this, too, has to play a role in the regulatory framework about how can we, as ventures, as researchers, as practitioners, be good stewards of this data. So Nidhi, can you tell us a little bit about what your perspective is on data security?
Absolutely. So all views are personal, thanks legal. So just want to say that when you think about AI in medical devices or any of healthcare industry, right, it's more than just the regulation that you would see, because ultimately it's about patient safety and effectiveness. And we often tend to ignore that cybersecurity is one of the major safety risks out there, because imagine that your data is hacked, right? It's not a credit card where you can go and change your credit card and replace it. Your healthcare data sells double the price on black market. So it's very important to protect that data, as well as using that data, you can literally change health outcomes for yourself. You could be changing the insulin dosage on yourself, which tends to, have very harmful effects on you, just putting it in layman terms. So from a regulator standpoint, I think that when you're thinking about AI regulation, it's important to consider cybersecurity, data validation, and the whole data supply chain that goes through, right? Cybersecurity, more than pre-market, it's the post-market. What happens once the products are out there in the market? Are you monitoring them? Are you detecting that there is a hack? Right? The detection plays an important role. And how are you going to even respond when there is a hack? Because within 12 seconds, your whole product can be shut down, and there could be like multiple stakeholders that are affected. So AI regulation is not, you cannot like have it in just a silo. You need to have strong foundations with data validation regulations, cybersecurity regulations, and ensuring that you establish trust between the patients as well as the company, right? Because ultimately it's about patient safety, and it's also about business risk as well as reputation risk. So having that strong foundation with a good quality management system plays a very important role when you're talking about AI regulation. That's the trust that you're going to establish between yourself and all the stakeholders.
It's very interesting, and yes, I know you're wanting to say something, but I was very curious from your perspective, coming from India, and understanding that that's a huge market, and we've been biased in our conversations around the EU and the US, but what's the future landscape, or what is the current state in India?
All right. So thank you for this thing. Just to add a point to what these panelists just spoke regarding cybersecurity. So I agree there are various significant challenges in that area when it comes to AI and the cybersecurity. So I think one of the technical issues that lie with AI is the bias, the inherent bias that exists. So it also depends on the quality of data that we deal with. So if you have an inclusive, more diverse data, then it may be easier to sort of replicate those kind of models elsewhere. Else it becomes too region-centric or class-oriented or ethnicity-oriented. So I think that also comes into the cybersecurity aspect, which I wanted to focus on. Now coming to India. So at this stage, India is lagging behind in terms of the AI debate, in terms of regulation, but at the same time, we are trying to see what is happening elsewhere. For example, we are closely following EU. and EU had come up with AI proposed legislation last year, 2021, where they had sort of provided a risk stratification kind of a mechanism where the products that had very, very high risk, they had to be absolutely regulated. Where the risk was pretty low, the products had somewhat relaxed sort of regulation there. So we have come up with technical consultation papers on that, and we are closely following the EU on that approach. EU actually balances the human rights as well as the digital privacy and also the innovation that needs to be supported somehow through the last proposed legislation that I read. Also, one more thing regarding the need to dynamically regulate this AI thing, what Dr. Hugh also focused on regarding the logged-in algorithm. So US FDA 510K recently, last month, I think, in September, if I'm not wrong, they came up with some sort of guideline on SAMD, software as a medical device, that they are not the traditional software medical devices as they exist when it comes to AI and ML. You need to have a logged-in algorithm that becomes regulated. At the same time, the companies can work on the dynamic part so that when that comes into the picture, when that model is ready, then they can apply for further sort of regulatory approval for that version of the product. So it's like a whole life cycle based sort of a monitoring and the regulation of that particular AI ML product, unlike the traditional cases of software as this thing. So India is lagging behind, but India is closely following these two countries. I think that is going to set the debate forward.
And it's very interesting to hear that perspective. And there's also, another big component about what we've been talking about, and it's still with the data. We've talked about the data privacy, but there's also the mechanism of how does the machine actually learn from the data? Where does it get started? And this is, just to kind of really make this, dumb this down a little bit, but if we're training, like I worked on a project once having to do with cough detection. And it's a sound we all make, we've all gone through it, but then you break it down and there's 3 phases of a cough, A, B, and C. There's a front, a middle, and a back. And it's got a nice audio map. It's very relatively clear to spot what's a cough and what's not a cough. Well, again, oversimplifying it. But somebody needs to listen to these coughs, and somebody needs to look at the coughs and label it. This is the beginning of A, this is the end of A, this is the beginning of part B, this is the end of part B, this is the beginning of C, and so on. And it's tedious because you have to go through thousands and thousands and thousands of clips in order to create a training data set. That's where the ML or the machine, the algorithms or the machine learns from that to say, this is the pattern you want me to spot. And so this gets tricky because where do you find the people to label the data? And so this has all sorts of regulatory implications, and I'd like us to just kind of, if we can opine upon this for a moment, because there's US regulations, there's EU regulations, who can do it? Does it need to be in the EU, out of the EU? Can the US do it? Does it need to be a doctor? And so on and so forth. So going back down the line, Hugh, maybe you can touch on that and we can work our way down? But first, put it in the context, there's a regulatory, there's a security component on it, there's a custody component, there's an infrastructure component. Yes, this is a complicated topic. So in 4 minutes.
Wow, less than 4 minutes because others want to speak. So it's a question of, like you say, who labels the data, what are their qualifications, what's their background, but also where are they? Because some countries don't let you export data outside their borders, so you can't just send the data to some other country to be labeled. And when it comes to the current paradigm of frozen algorithms which get regulatory clearance, in your documentation that you submit, you have to list who labeled your data, what was the quality assurance on that labeling. If we're going to talk about the future, which we want to happen, which is continuously learning AI, who's going to be labeling that data continuously in the future? Are we going to have other AIs doing the labeling of that data? If so, how accurate are they? Who's quality assuring them? So it creates a whole new kettle of fish, as we say in the UK, about the labeling. But AI is nothing without accurately labeled data, as you've quite rightly said.
Daniel, please.
Yeah, so two topics on this. The proposals still have work to do, so they are not final, and I would say that there are some features that were identified, and I hope they are worked on. One of them is who inserts data, okay? And who inserts data is important because you have the medical doctors that insert, you have the exams that can be inserted, but you can also be a source of data. And the wearables that you wear can be source of data as well. And so that is something that it comes across, but it doesn't dig. So, and it's always a challenge because it cannot dig enough, because too much, or it will be attached to some technology, and you can't do that. So that's always a challenge for regulation, so not be attached to some technology. On the other hand, just to finish, the interoperability is also a feature that is touched in these proposals that I speak before. So an AI system that is created can be connected to the data sets of the European health data space. So that is already previewed. And if this happens, the technology will have to comply both with the AI and with the data space regulation. So that is something that you have a line on that, but now you have to understand what that means in the law, in the text of the law.
Okay, and yes.
So adding to that, the technology is not mature yet. Technology needs to mature, and we are on our way. But while that happens, we also have to understand that, especially FDA has already approved or cleared rather 500 AI algorithms, right? And now that these are out in the market, real-world evidence and real-world data will come into picture. And using those data sets now, it's important to train these algorithms to learn, but all these data sets are out in the open. So we still don't know how we can establish that trust. And for me, AI and machine learning is all about establishing trust between all the stakeholders, because the outcomes can be either very beneficial or they can go in vain and cause harmful effects.
Yeah, just to sum up regarding my opinion, I think I largely concur with all the panelists here. I think the need of the hour is to have sort of harmonized rules across all the countries so as to get over with the interoperability issue. That's one. Second thing, I think we need to involve more people, including social scientists, anthropologists, and people who understand technology, so that we have an informed opinion before actually coming into the AI regulation. I think that's it from my side.
Well, thank you very much, all of you. It's really an interesting topic, and it's also an incredibly complicated topic. And so, if you guys have questions, if there's any comments you want to make, search us out throughout the rest of the conference. We'll be happy to answer them. But thank you very much for your time, and very much appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you.